Thanks for listening to Health and Safety Conversations with Tom Bourne. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your week.
Hi, and welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. I'm your host, Tom Bourne, and with me today is the wonderful Lachie Samuel. Lachie, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Very good. I almost choked on a bit of spit as I was saying. I was trying to get the words out and I was just running out of air. So that was good that I managed to get the whole sentence out. Oh, dear. Well, thanks so much for your time, Lachie. For those who don't know you, and you are well known across safety circles, particularly here in WA, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I guess I ran away from NZ when I was young and ended up in a place called Kalgoorlie. Long story short, spent 10 or so years scaffolding and stumbled my way into sharing my story around my experience with mental health in FIFO and mining, which is just over the last 5 or 6 years and going through different modalities of study and just learning and meeting people, turned into a job, really unintentionally. Started with podcasting, speaking, sharing my story, and then now delivering mental health programs on mine sites.
Yeah, excellent. Stereotyping. I got to tell you, every place I've been to, and I'd say scaffolding, they say, "Oh, the Kiwis for sure." Is that true?
Yeah, it's the easiest job to get into, man, because you know someone. Like mining, I'm sure you know, mining is about who you know, not what you know. And for people coming over from NZ, it's just easy because there's always a Kiwi in one of the companies who can get you a job.
Yeah, fantastic. Speaking of which, got a lovely Kiwi lass who's a good friend of my wife, and never seemed like the FIFO state type, but she's now up in the Pilbara working with trains, and you go, not sure you've got any background in that, but you've obviously know someone. So yeah, it is the honest truth. I used to get lots of people when they come and do, studies for, certificate 4 in health and safety, and they say, "How do I get into mining? And how do I get into mining? Will this get me into mining?" And you'd say it's at them at the end and say, "I hate to tell you this, but it's more about who you know than actually what you know." and people will give you a crack at a job if they know what you are and what you stand for, what your work ethic is, they'll upskill you from there rather than take someone with a wonderful piece of paper that they just don't have a clue whether they're going to work out or not.
Yeah, that's true. I remember being at a construction gig, maybe 2012, 2013, 4-in-1, and our German supervisor from Kalgoorlie started leading and hiring for that, and he picked all of us because he knew us. And most of us probably had 1 to 4 years of experience, and he was turning down people with scaffolding, rigging tickets, crane tickets, like 20 years experience just because he knew us all.
Yeah. FIFO has some interesting challenges, and what was the old acronym that they used to say? It fit in or basically disappear, wasn't
it? Yep, fly off.
Yeah, that's it. Fly off. That's it. Dear. All right. You're passionate about the FIFO industry and some of the challenges that people involved with it have. Why?
I guess it's just centered around my story. In 2009, I would have come over here as a 19-year-old to Kalgoorlie. So run away from all my baggage in Auckland, New Zealand, got caught out cheating on my partner with my best friend's partner. And so at the time, which is the thing I've been working on the most, is like character building and being a man of integrity. I had no integrity then, so I couldn't accept consequences for my actions. So instead of do that, I run away, found myself in Kalgoorlie working, making more money than I could ever make in NZ, and found a partner, and then we got together and moved from Kalgoorlie to Perth. And so She ended up going through her own mental health challenges and, threatening to harm herself unless I stopped, and I couldn't see myself stopping. Instead, I took it as like, you're trying to manipulate me into leaving the thing I like. It's the brotherhood, it's the free gym, free food, all that sort of stuff. Cringe when I think about it now, but I didn't stop. And so she eventually attempted, and then I went through my own journey with mental health while working at that 4-in-1 at Sino in Cape Preston. And so as a part of that, I got forced out of my job. It's no one's fault. We just didn't know what mental health was back then. I was just a really crap worker and treated everyone terribly. And then fast forward, I spent a couple of years going in and out of FIFO and mining, and then ended up at a place called Wheatstone to pay off some debt. And while I was up there, one of the boys from the crew, he took his life. I got evacuated for being suicidal myself, and then one of our really good friends up there took his life like 3 months later. So it's a lot in one hit, but that period at Wheatstone, losing those guys and then going through my own battle, and then on the backside having to go through therapy to figure out why I was such a narcissist, why I was so happy to hurt people and not take responsibility. That sort of led me to this position of starting a podcast, interviewing people about their stories to figure out what they did to better themselves as people. And as that journey's progressed, I've been nudged towards FIFO and mining, because that's where I like being. That's where most of my story is based, and that's where most of my friends still work.
Yeah. Listen, I got to tell you, you've done some awfully good reflective thinking and soul searching. It takes a big person, Lachie, to, I don't know, admit we're not perfect and admit that we've got character flaws that we need to work on and stuff. So congratulations, mate. Listen, the fact that you can talk about those things, and suicide's, it's a horrible, horrible thing. And the fact that you're able to talk about that, yeah, I my admiration for you has grown enormously in the last 10 minutes. How's that?
Oh, cheers, man.
Because, I did FIFO for a very short period of time, and some of the things that you spoke about ring a bell. I think they would ring a bell for most people who do fly in and fly out work. 4-in-1 roster, well, that, no offense, that is the crap roster, I'd suggest. Yeah. Luckily, there's not a lot of those sort of rosters around anymore. And there seems to have been a bit of emphasis on working out that, people do have a life outside the mines and or resources. And, if you don't take care of your people, they don't come back eventually, one way or another.
One of the cool things that I've seen, because I used to have the belief, like, if you can't do 4-in-1, then you're just soft, or if you can't do 3-in-1, you're soft. And I ended up becoming one of those people. And so in watching what's happened with FMG, especially the Chichester hub going from 2-in-1, because my first visit there in 2021, that was their biggest issue. People were struggling with 2-in-1 because they'd been transitioned from 8 and 6, I think it was, for 1-in-1 to 2-in-1 rosters, and they pushed really hard to get even time, and they finally did even time in 2022. And going back at the back end of last year and this year, I have people like constantly coming to me for one-on-one conversations who say that the change from 2-in-1 to 2-in-2 has completely transformed like their life, their relationship with their kids, their relationship with their partner, and they're coming back to work feeling rested and ready to work, rather than like, oh, damn, I have to fly back. When's this week going to be over?
Yeah. Look, I don't think my version of FIFO is any different from anyone else's. But what, you know it yourself, but what are some of the challenges that the people you speak to in the FIFO industry? What makes it unique, and what are those challenges there that people face?
I think what makes it unique is the isolation. That's a massive one. Just being away from family, and for most people, their family would fulfill a lot of their human needs, like love, contribution, all that sort of thing. And so when you're so detached from that, and you're in a place where there's no clear line between like your working day and the time you get to relax, because you spend breakfast with the crew, you get on the bus and go to work with them, you have smoko lunch, and then you get on the bus, go home, go gym with them, play basketball, whatever, and then you have dinner with them. And it becomes this hamster wheel where there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. And especially if you can't, which is the big thing in mining, people can't regulate their stress.
Yeah,
because they haven't been taught how to, and they don't really understand that they can. They just feel like, damn, I'm stressed out. I'm not getting my stuff done quick enough. And so that isolation leads to a whole lot of these issues where people are either on one side blowing up, doing dumb stuff, injuring themselves, turning up to work with presenteeism, or on the other side just totally shutting down and isolating themselves. And both of those really impact the culture within a team. And if you diminish the trust, even just with one, not bad egg, but one person who's going through stuff that they don't know how to deal with, that'll have this like flow on, knock-on effect to everyone in the team. And ultimately the supervisor is going to be responsible for sorting that. And if you got supervisors who are avoidant in terms of hard conversations, because that's one of the surprising things that I've found recently, is that quite a few supervisors don't like disciplining people and shy away from that conversation and just allow bad behavior to continue within a team, hoping that it'll sort itself out.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It tends to just fester and get worse until there's some something that pops out which really they have to take action with. But by then, it's actually can lead to some pretty dramatic actions for individuals as well. Now, what can we do to actually help our people? Because let's be honest, someone said to me the other day, I think it's true, that everyone in Western Australia is either a FIFO worker or knows a FIFO worker, either in their immediate group of family or friends. And I went and thought about it and went, yeah, you're probably right. And some of the areas I've been working in, and that you've got a lot of people who basically their partners in Perth or in the suburbs around Perth, and they're off for extended periods of time. How do we actually, or what can we actually do to help FIFO workers cope with that sort of isolation and that the feelings of not being in touch with their community?
I think in some companies and sites, I just went to a site where Sodexo was running the camp, and they're doing a really good job of engaging people and doing activities that people actually want to take part in.
Mm-hmm.
Like quiz nights down at the bar about topics that have some sort of relevance to them.
Yep.
But I think ensuring that the camps have those facilities like the cricket nets, all of that sort of stuff, the pools, the gym, and the HLCs engaging people at camp, at least then there's space for connection, competition, just play, having fun. Because I think without the balance of like play and fun, a 2-week roster gets pretty monotonous pretty fast. Yeah. And that's where people begin to feel, in my opinion anyway, begin to feel a sense of hopelessness, because it's like, far out, this whole 2 weeks is going to be the same. I'm not going to have any fun. I've just got to wait until my break. And then that's when people tend to fly off the handle and, do things that they shouldn't do on their break and don't actually rest because they're too busy trying to balance that stuff out. But on the other side, I think if we could help people in relationships identify their needs and communicate well with their partners, that'd solve a lot of the issues that are happening on site, because that's probably one of the biggest ones, especially at a leadership level, because leaders, and they tend to say this quite a lot, I don't bring my personal life to work. It's like, well, you can say that, but if you're not bringing it to work, all you're doing is trying to suffocate it as best you can while you're here and cope until you get home, and then you're going to deal with it. So yeah, helping people with that relationship stuff is massive, especially when it comes to avoidance, because I'm sure you've seen that yourself. It's the tendency for a guy to miss a call that he's agreed to get on at night after work because he's gone to the pub, and then the missus is angry and he's like, oh shit, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to ignore the texts and the calls. And then it's the next day when he wakes up. It's like, man, problem's still there. How long are you going to avoid your partner instead of just saying, oh man, I stuffed up, I'm sorry?
Yeah. No, it does happen. It does happen. Luckily, these days, we do have, in a lot of camps at least, well, relatively stable means of communications with the outside world. I've been at sites where there's virtually no reception. You're talking about one area of the camp was the size of a postage stamp, where you could get reception, and you see, dozens of people at the end of shift trying to get on this one little piece of land so that they can call home. And you've got partners there who, if you don't make that call or that, just assume that you've stopped caring, you've forgotten about them, you've done all these things, which you just don't. And so things like that with the frustration would just build. And that was one of the things I found at FIFO industry. If you started to get frustrated, you didn't have good mechanisms to release that frustration, you're painting a pretty dismal lifestyle for yourself while you're away, and it can build, I think. And
I don't think people realize how easy it is to shed some of that built up tension or stress. It's people think they have to go and get really drunk, or they have to go and speak to a psychologist. No, it's like as simple as doing 1 minute of breathing, and you can literally change your physiological state. It's such a good practice to have in terms of like de-escalating or down-regulating your nervous system. It's awesome and it's easy. It's just most people don't understand that.
Yeah. So you often hear from people that I've heard, other people who have never done FIFO work they call these people civilians. They say FIFO workers get paid, let's be honest, a shitload of money. Why do they get paid so much? Tell me, why do they get paid so much? Because I know you and I know differently.
Yeah, well, I think they get paid, a lot of them get paid so much because they're doing high-risk work. That'd be number one. Obviously, not all people in high-risk work get paid the same, especially if you're with a labour hire company. Seems to be you get reamed in terms of your pay. But I'd say high-risk work, and then just the fact that you're being taken away from your family and literally spending, half plus of your year, of your life in that period of time with the company is, I guess, the remuneration for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty easy one to understand. It's just some people have such a poor relationship with money that they don't, that they have a really negative opinion about FIFO workers, especially when you got the stereotype about the FIFO worker buying the Land Cruiser, buying the camper van, buying the jet ski. which is all true.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
all true, but
Yeah.
it's definitely, I think people, they deserve the pay that they get. We
Yeah.
just definitely need to teach them how to use their money better so they're not stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The one thing I try and get people to understand is that if you work in Perth and you do a Monday to Friday job, you're working roughly 38 hours a week. You do FIFO, you're doing 84 hours a week. You wonder why they get paid more. Because if
Yeah.
you look at it at an hourly rate, and they're not getting an awful lot, really, really. So the disparity is there, but not for the hours they work. And
That's a very good point.
All right. Yeah. So one of the things with FIFO workers, that particularly ones who are starting out, struggle with is fatigue. Because you're working long hours, then you're coming back. The temptation is that you've only got 12 hours now. You've got to communicate with your family. You've got to go. Of course, you've got to go and eat. You've got to go and do something to burn off a bit of energy and get some stress out of it. And you can end up building up a sleep deficit that just doesn't go away.
Yep.
Any ideas on how do we teach our people to, value the sleep while they're away so they're not just zombies after the first 5 days?
I think the easiest way is to have some sort of sleep tracker. I think that's the way that I found out that my quality of sleep was poor. And so I was the person who, when we worked construction, it was like a badge of honor for all of us to see who could sleep the least and work the hardest. And it was like, 4 to 5 hours for most of us of sleep a night, going to the gym early, going to the gym late. And so we didn't understand the impact. Plus, we could buy a lot of alcohol at that point, whereas now it's like 4 mid-strengths. So that helps. But for someone who's stepping into the industry, get a sleep tracker because it'll tell you how much you're shifting throughout the night. And then a really important one that I think is overlooked, although speaking to Rio last week, they were talking about how they test their people for sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently been tested and realized that I've got severe sleep apnea, like waking 56 times an hour, which I'm just like, holy moly, how do I even feel okay throughout the day? And that has a massive impact on my testosterone, on my mood, probably contributed a lot to the depressive episodes I've had. So for someone stepping into that space, testing that and finding out, shit, am I getting enough regenerative sleep so that in the morning I feel okay enough to go again for 12 hours, especially if you're like a driller's offsider or someone who's new to scaffing and you have to lug all the gear.
Yep. I noticed you said okay. You didn't say fresh.
Yeah, or I think it's going to be a case of getting used to working hard. I don't think you're ever going to feel fresh if you're working hard 12 hours and then, trying to sleep at camp.
Yeah. This is one of those things that people don't also understand is the accommodation at camp. It varies, doesn't it? You can have the ones where the air conditioning is running at something like 30 or 40 decibels while you're trying to sleep. You can have the ones where you've got the lights right outside your room and that sort of foiling up the whole windows. You're not going to get sleep at all. And then you've got your lovely talkative neighbours that love to talk or do whatever else which creates noise. And it's not like you can go and, I don't know, solve the problem yourself there, is it?
No, not at all. And now the position I'm in, because I bounce around different sites for like 2 or 3 days a week, I'm always in those those older rooms that were there when they first started the camp, So the last room I was actually in, I remember calling my partner and I was like, oh, I'm calling you on the way back to my room because my walls are paper thin and I can hear the guy hoiking up phlegm like every 30 seconds, So I'm going to call you now so that I don't have to talk to you while he can hear me.
Yeah. Sleep apnea, my friend, something that needs to be sorted out. because I got diagnosed with it about 20 years ago. And at that stage, they were saying, you need to get one of these big Darth Vader masks, do the whole sound of him breathing at night. And I resisted that. And look, my only suggestion, and I know it's a terrible one because the only thing I found that worked was I lost weight. I lost about 20 kilos and my sleep apnea has basically vanished. I was just heavy around the throat and it was restricting my breathing if I lay certain ways. And that the alternative is with sleep apnea is you talk about waking yourself up. The alternative is you don't wake up because you just stop breathing. That's the scary but honest truth of it. All right. The two things I found on camp that basically meant whether that was a happy camp or an unhappy camp, besides obviously getting paid on time, was the accommodation, the quality of the accommodation and the quality of the food. Are they still the main things?
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a massive role. I've noticed even if I'm put in one of those older rooms that hasn't been looked after well, that's got like mold on the ceiling in the bathroom and all this built up dirt and gunk in the corners of the rooms, then it's just like not a nice place to go back to. So I want to spend as little time in that room as possible, whereas that should probably be your space to like wind down. So that definitely plays a part, and that's the thing that people complain about the most. I'd say second to the food. And I'm sure if you know FIFO workers, there's always going to be someone who's complaining about the food, even if everyone else says it's good. So I think it's just dependent on the budget. I think it's dependent on the chef that you have on your swing, or who's on the swing and who's the better chef. And with these like hospo companies competing against each other, it's like the more they drop their offer to the client, the less money they're going to have in the budget to put towards that food. So, I mean, we've already seen it with a lot of those hospo companies paying low wages for HLCs and things like that. Makes sense that, if they cut their offer or drop it to get the contract, then they're going to have to drop it for the food as well.
Yeah. I won't tell you where I was working, but I was working remotely. We'll say that. Working remotely and doing night shift. I used to love night shift, Lachie, because there's no big bosses around and you can basically get stuff done. Maybe not the right way, but the quickest way and the most effective way. But anyhow, like night shift, but every night we used to get the same meal, and it was boiled rice, no flavour, just boiled rice, and two not cooked in the oven, but boiled chicken drumsticks.
Was this prison? Was that working remotely?
It's not far off it. It's not far off it. But it was just like, you're kidding me. This is day in and day out. And I was just like, what sort of budget are you guys working on? Because it's not coming into food, I'll tell you now.
Sounds like a bodybuilder's diet.
Oh, we used to basically eventually feed the local cats most of the drumsticks because it's just inedible after a while. But I've seen some absolutely fabulous food on camps too. One camp out Western Queensland, we had Chinese night every Friday night, and every I think a Tuesday night was a seafood night where they'd truck inverted commas fresh seafood in. But things like that used to actually lift the morale of people because it gave them something to look forward to at the end of the day, as opposed to it's the same old crap day in and day out, which is quite depressing.
Yeah, well, that was the big thing for us at for most sites. It's like fish and chip Fridays, everyone's up and about. And then when we're at Wheatstone on Sunday mornings, they had Eggs Benedict. And so they just had like all these muffins with hollandaise and eggs and stuff on it. And that was what prepped us up, especially working through the weekend. So definitely makes a difference. I think For the most part, though, like the food's probably good. It's just a case of, for most places, people like variety.
Mm.
And if people don't like that routine and getting stuck eating the same thing, or a lot of people anyway, don't like getting stuck eating the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I grew up in a fairly poor household, my friend, and food sometimes was fairly scarce. So, the first, I don't know, first year or so I was doing FIFO, you'd go out to these places and there'd be like 12 different types of food. And I felt obliged every night to try each of the 12 different types of food. And I'd have plates this big. I'd go away for 2 weeks. And I'd come back with 1.5 kilos on. It's just like, because, no one had actually taught me that you don't need to have all that food all the time. And, be same for lunches. I'd pack everything in just in case. And then I'd feel obliged I had to eat it because, you don't waste food.
Yeah, and then you got the free pies and sausage rolls.
Oh, yeah. Is it still the case that there's always someone in a crew that will basically go and hoard all the pies in their room, or go with the cookies or something, and they'll just basically take all the biscuits back to their room and just hoard them? Because we used to see them.
There are people like that.
Yeah,
it's most places that you'd have that person, but they bring it onto site, so that it's in the freeze, because most places have freezers. So you just stock all the pies that everyone likes. The bacon cheese ones, I think, is the Irvine's ones, or Mrs. Max, that everyone likes stocking up. And so you'll see those people bringing in bags of those to put in the freezer.
Yeah. No, it's always good. All right. When you go public speaking, how hard was it to you to start publicly speaking about your story to start with, and then just some of the challenges that the average FIFO worker faces?
I think with that, I got like a trial by fire, essentially. So I learned very quickly that it wasn't going to be a smooth ride and everyone was going to be supportive. Because the first time I actually told my story was, I think, with 7 News or something like that. And they posted it. They did the video, did it on the news, and then put it on Facebook as well. And like the reaction to that was not good. This guy who's a scaffy, who's talking about suicide and how FIFO was hard, and the way media painted it was that, I'm saying FIFO was hard as a whole. So yeah, I got people reaching out, telling me I was a snowflake, telling me that I should have killed myself.
Oh,
I was just like,
no.
whoa. I'm like, whoa, man, this sucks. And so I learned very quickly how to like let go of those negative opinions, or just allow them to bounce off and not take them on. Otherwise, I just would have been like catatonic in fetal position.
Yeah.
But as speaking itself and telling the story, I think over time, as I've worked through a lot of the stuff from my childhood, and I've worked through a lot of the stuff that's happened in FIFO, through therapy and different modalities, it's got easier and easier and easier to tell the story. And I've told it so much that it has no emotional impact on me anymore, which is like really freeing in terms of not having an energy dump from being in your own emotional low.
Yeah. Speaking of therapy, look, to be honest, I'm fairly old. You might have guessed that, Lachie, but there is, for people my age, and even some people who are younger, a real stigma about going to get help. How do we go about changing that? I got to say, it is for me. I still think of therapy as weakness, as in you're broken, as there's something wrong with you. I try and be smarter about it, but I still find, if for myself, and I do have my own problems, I can tell you now. And some people have suggested I go and get therapy, that my normal reaction is, no way, I'm never going to do that. How do
you're not alone, right, with that, the view of it being weakness, because that's most people. I mean, until you are in a position where you finally take the leap and engage someone like an EAP provider, a psychologist, or your site chaplain, and you have a good experience, you don't understand the difference between what you perceive it to be based on what the notion is or collective notion is versus reality. It's really just talking to someone who can guide you to your own answers. That's pretty much it. And sometimes we just need that third person perspective to get the stuff that's in our head out of our head, so we can sort of filter through, okay, what's real? What am I making up because I have these like different belief systems or beliefs about myself, especially limiting ones like I'm not enough, or I need to do X, Y, and Z to prove that I'm good enough. What's real and tangible, and then what is just based on these belief systems and me trying to prove those true.
Yeah. Speaking of EAP, is there much in terms of support that employers give to workers' mental health while they're on site?
I mean, there are companies that have the chaplains, there are the EAP providers which have low usage rates. And, you know, a lot of that at the moment is due to just demand and companies not being able to keep up with it. We started one with Therapy Focus when I was partnered with a business called FIFO Happiness. We started a FIFO led and run EAP service as a test, as a trial. And, you know, what we realized is that the wait times of all these different companies were 3, 4, up to 6 weeks. So if you think about the person who's just found the courage to say, shit, I need help, and they've called this phone line, and all of a sudden they got to wait 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks, that puts them off of the service, and then puts other people off of the service, because they're now talking about it like, shit, I called and, you know, they didn't help me, or they let me down. And a lot of people who are in that position, if we feel let down, we're going to talk about it. So I think in terms of that, what they're giving to the company and to the people, that's going to increase just with the regulations that have come in place. But I don't know too many companies that have identified, okay, cool, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. And then this is our path of action. I don't think too many places have done that quite yet, because that responsibility is being put onto the health and safety teams or the HR teams, who haven't really dealt with engaging well-being companies or mental health companies for this sort of thing. So it's really going to be a period of testing, really.
Yeah. Any sort of government initiatives that are aimed to help out businesses and the workers who are actually doing this work?
There's a government initiative. I think they put a couple million into funding a few different companies. It's called Mars. And I know there are companies like FIFO Focus, who are awesome, run by 2 amazing ladies here in Perth, who are doing good work. It's mostly been based on creating workshops for people from FIFO to come and do in Perth. I'm not too sure of like the scale, the scope, or the reach of those programs as yet, but I'm sure we'll hear more as it comes out. And then there's another one, I think Lifeline set up with the Chamber of Minerals and Energy, where they're rolling out peer support systems, which seem to be doing well, seem to be going really well. And in terms of peer support, I think probably just need a few tweaks to make it relevant just to FIFO.
Yeah, cool. Interesting you talk about FIFO Focus. I spoke to lovely Sandra from them the other day. I asked her a question. I'm going to ask you the same question. I won't tell you her answer until I know your answer. Is the FIFO lifestyle for everyone?
No, not at all. I think where people tend to get tripped up is there are a couple places, but two that come to mind immediately are the people who are running from like financial strife, or they've been in a position where they haven't really had money and they're running towards the money and the high ticket salary, especially throughout that COVID period where, they couldn't get East Coasters. So a lot of people were bumping up their pays and advertising the pay.
Mm-hmm.
Those people tend to struggle because you go into it, and Matt Hearn, who works with FIFO Focus on the financial side of things, would probably have a better understanding. But if you're going into it with that perspective, you're running towards money because you believe money is going to make you feel whatever you want to feel, validated, worthy, enough, whatever, and you get into that position and you're going to be more likely just to spend that money in the way that you spent money in the past that's led to, the current financial position. So that's where people struggle. And then people with young kids seem to struggle the most. It's like, yeah, I understand you want to set yourself up well and you want to set your kids up and get a house and get ahead, but you really have to weigh up the fact that you're going to be away for like 2 weeks at a time, especially if you've got a baby. You're going to have to come back every time and adjust to them not knowing who you are or being standoffish, which is something that I went through with my kid as well.
Yep.
And it's not a good experience. So just weighing that up and, the impact that has on them, but then also you being away, because a lot of people in that position struggle, try to make it work because they made that decision. And it's not until they burn out or do something stupid, something that they regret, that they're like, okay, cool, I need to step away from FIFO. So people in those positions, like FIFO is always going to be there. The Australian economy is reliant on mining, and these jobs are always going to be here. But that time with your family, that time to like have space to yourself isn't. So, step in. If it's not for you, step back for a little bit. At some point in the future, you might be at a different life cycle where you can step back in and it works.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. It's I don't think it's for everyone either. I know it took a wake up call from my family before I won't say pulled my head in, but reevaluated what was going on. And yeah, I think does happen. And eventually you're right. When you talk about your story and you start to think that people are trying to take away from you what you actually like doing, yeah, those thoughts are common. And it's not until you actually take a step away and you look and go, oh, geez, what have I done to these people, these good people that I care about? But yeah, certainly. Yeah, I don't think it's
the trap is identity in that, right? Is for a lot of people, they'll go into a role and it's the money, it's the fact that you're working FIFO, and it's different to most of the people that especially if you're a hard worker and you get a lot of validation or sense of self-worth from the role that you do, especially being in a place where you can focus solely on your job and doing it well, then like you build this identity and this persona around who you are and what you do. And that's hard to let go of. I'm sure you know the person who was good at sports when you were younger, who's still finding it hard to let go of the fact that they were this person. If they didn't injure their knee, they would have been a footy star.
Yes.
It's the same with building that identity around our jobs as FIFO workers.
Golden handcuffs.
Yep.
Is that a real problem?
Yeah, it is, man. I think that's self-inflicted, right? It's not golden handcuffs because the company's done X, Y, or Z to us. It's because if we put ourselves in a position to make that money, then we haven't used that money well to put ourselves in a position to eventually leave. That's the thing, is that people seem to make more money and then spend more money. Especially, what I see in FIFO is people spending money to make up for the time that they're away, buying like the Land Cruiser, the 300 series, buying the camper van, because it's like, oh yeah, now when I'm home, we can go away.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you just put yourself in like $150,000, $200,000 more debt that you're going to have to pay off by working FIFO.
I
So
will
it doesn't
buy.
really help you.
I will buy my family's happiness somehow.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing I find also is that a lot of people, you would have gone when you were fairly young, as I said, 19, into the resource industry. You're getting swamped with money that you've never even thought about before. All of a sudden, you're getting all this money. You might not get any sort of financial counseling in it. And so you do start spending as if this money is going to be there always. And mining, just as much as we are doing all right at the moment, being old, I've actually seen a few mining booms come and go. It's a cyclical type of thing. And you have your boom times, but there's also the bust times. And if you've spent all your money on buying McMansions, the latest cars and all the accessories, and you've built up this wonderful lifestyle, you might be in for a rude shock when either life takes it away from you or the resource industry goes in through a down period.
Yeah, well, it's inevitable, right? It's the highs always have to be followed by the lows. So I think in those positions, the companies are getting really good at bringing in people to help with the financial side of things. But I know so many people who are just like I was, afraid to even look at their tax returns because it's like, fuck, well, I don't know anything about this sort of stuff and what I can claim, so I'm just going to avoid it.
Yep.
But if you avoid money, it's going to avoid you, So
yeah. All right. Can I ask an interesting question? There's been a lot of talk in the media about, let's say, gender-based, we'll call it issues on FIFO sites. Are they as bad and as prevalent as what the media would make it out to be?
I would say yes, like absolutely. It's there. It just hasn't been spoken about before. It's, most places, because it was mostly guys and we could treat guys however we wanted. It's like that behavior has filtered down to women as they're bringing in the quotas for women and that diversity. And we haven't really taught men, although, we should know how to change the behavior, how to change the way that they show up around women so that we're not treating them disrespectfully like we would men, right? And so there definitely would be that sort of stuff. It's definitely prevalent. There's a lot of it. It just, now there's a light on it. Now there are the regulations coming in place. So I think people who are doing it and who have been getting away with it for whatever reason are probably going to be put under the pump in the coming years as we highlight it more and more and more, and we bring more women into mining, especially into leadership roles.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking to a lady who runs Women in Safety, Alana Ball, last year, I was speaking to her, and she said, quotas don't really solve it. If you're not addressing the behaviour, all you're doing is bringing more women on to be exposed to the same stuff that only a few used to be exposed to. And I went, oh, yeah. I see a place for quotas because, it's making it a more diverse workplace and et cetera, but yeah, I think teaching people, I don't know, if nothing else, the legalities of their behaviour, let alone the consequences of lack of respect, that might be a place to start firstly before.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're definitely getting wrong with this, and I've seen this quite a bit, and it actually shocked me because I was like, why the heck, as someone hiring, as a leader hiring, would you say this to a candidate? Because there's this quota and they're hiring more women, they might hire a woman for a supervisor role or leadership role, put her in that place, but then tell the other candidate who's been working there full-time as well as a step-up leader, hey, man, you were the best person for the job, but we've got to hire a woman. And so it's like, well, if you're going to tell him that, he's going to be upset and he's going to undermine her leadership and tell everyone else, and then no one's going to really respect her. So what are you actually doing in that position? You're setting her up for failure.
That's exactly right. Setting up for failure, white-handing, gaslighting, whatever you want to do it. It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. I agree 100%. All right, Lachie. I think time is calling, so we might call it quits today. I really do appreciate your help, and I really do appreciate what you're doing for the FIFO community and for coming on today and sharing some of your wisdom, mate. So thanks very much, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Oh, cheers, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. Here's your host, Tom Bourne.